Hey everybody, it's Johnny Two-Face here, back with another reaction video. And yes, my voice is a bit growly. My voice, I've just been recovering from I've been recovering from illness, and my voice hasn't fully returned just yet, so I'm gonna sound a little rough. So just a quick advance warning. And this time I'm reacting to Battle of Palkhed, 1728 AD, Mughal Maratha Wars, by History March. Now this is the last episode in the History of India playlist by History on History March's channel. So this is the last episode in their playlist. So if you haven't seen my reactions to the first 3 episodes in this playlist, I suggest you check them out before checking this one out. And sorry. The usual disclaimer when I react to anything historical: if I don't show so much what is considered a proper reaction, is cool, that's bright, is probably obvious I don't know much about the subject at hand, and if I do know anything, I'll most likely pause the video to give my input or ask any curious questions, which hopefully will be answered in the comments. With that being said, the link to the original video will be in the description down below. Please go and subscribe to History March. In my opinion, another great history channel that is so amazing, and I believe you should check and support their channel. And I'm not going to waffle on much longer, so that's full screened. Get this up here. Captions are on, and let's get into this. Oh, and check out Hoc Est Bellum as well.
It's late 16th century. The Mughal Empire is the most prominent force in mainland India.
Yep.
The Mughals were an Islamic dynasty that succeeded the Delhi Sultanate, established some 350 years
from
earlier,
1206
when
to
Muhammad of
1526.
Ghor defeated the northern Indian kingdoms, cementing the Islamic presence in the Indian subcontinent. While the Mughals were masters of most of northern India, remnant sultanates still ruled over most central areas of the subcontinent, most notably the Deccan region. Despite being Islamic, these dynasties were mutually antagonistic towards each other. As the Mughals consolidated their power in the north and slowly advanced into the Deccan region, local Hindus from the western hilly plateau tried to use the internal divisions between Islamic elements in order to assert themselves. They were the Marathas.
Oh, so it's pronounced Marathas. I'm sorry for butchering that name earlier.
This video is brought to you by Geology, a personalized skincare for men that is based on the benefits you... Friends will definitely notice the results, and you'll love the quick and easy...
Feel free to check them out if you're interested.
Up until the mid-17th century, the Marathas lacked a centralized form of government, and thus served under various powers that rose in the region, usually as feudatories. But this changed when a charismatic leader named Shivaji was able for the first time to establish the Maratha kingdom. By the time of his death in 1680, the Marathas were a significant force in central India, and were frequently able to assume the role of mediator between the disputing sultanates of the area. In order to deal with this problem, the Mughals launched a series of devastating and costly campaigns against the elusive and fast-moving Maratha armies. But even after almost 30 years of war that claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of
Sorry, I'll just read this. Aurangzeb's campaigns against the Marathas lasted from 1683 to 1707. Okay.
Of men and caused
Bit of extra context.
severe attrition to the Mughal Empire. The Marathas could not be subjugated. However, the Marathas were not completely united, with various factions competing internally, and the Mughals exploited this disunity. While they were retreating back to the north after decades of unsuccessful campaigning in the Maratha heartland, Mughal courtiers released a Maratha prince named Shahu, who had been their prisoner since he was a child, in the hope that this would spark a civil war amongst the competing Maratha factions. The plan worked, and the Marathas were soon plunged into a civil war, from which Shahu emerged victorious in 1708, consolidating his power base around Satara. But the defeated faction headed by Sambhaji II was not destroyed. They retreated back to Kolhapur, which became their stronghold. While this conflict was raging amongst the Marathas, the Mughals had their own problems to deal with. The state of affairs within the Mughal Empire after the death of their last emperor in 1707 was chaotic. The prolonged and unfruitful campaigns against the Marathas created a volatile political situation within the empire, which was now in a downward spiral. Numerous subjugated peoples rebelled against the central authority, while the exhausted army and depleted treasury were further strained due to internal Mughal factionalism, fratricidal bouts, and a continuous cycle of succession wars and conflicts. During these internal conflicts between powerful Mughal nobles, the Marathas occasionally intervened in favor of one faction against another, even providing occasional military assistance.
So basically, the enemy of my enemy is my friend tactic. And of course, the other splits in the Mughal Empire that I've noticed, Nawab of Bengal and the Sikh Empire up here in the north.
It was due to their role as mediators that the Marathas were eventually granted the right to collect taxes in the entire Deccan region.
The Marathas were granted the right to collect Chaut. Sorry if I butcher this. Chaut and Sardamukhi, around 35% of total revenue owed to the Mughal state.
From this chaotic civil strife rose a man that went by the name of Nizam al-Mulk, who would become the most powerful Mughal of the Deccan region. Nizam hailed from the top echelons of Mughal aristocracy, and his family played a prominent role in imperial politics for generations. During the period of civil wars between numerous pretenders for the Mughal throne after 1707, he had enough foresight to remain neutral, biding his time while conserving his forces, waiting for the proper moment to make his move. His moment came when he was called upon to intervene during one of the many feuds within the Mughal court. Nizam was made Grand Vizier of the Mughal Empire in 1721, but, alarmed with his growing power, Emperor Muhammad
Nizam was declared the vizier by the Emperor Muhammad Shah.
Shah transferred him from the court at Delhi to Awadh in 1723. Nizam rebelled against the order, resigned his position as Grand Vizier, and marched towards the Deccan. However, while en route, he was stripped of his governorship of the Deccan and declared a rebel. The emperor sent an army against him under the command of Mubariz Khan. Nizam was now in dire straits. With the Marathas at his back and
sorry, I was
just
doing something on my watch.
Mubariz Khan. Nizam was now in dire straits.
Okay.
The emperor sent an army against him under the command of Mubariz Khan. Nizam was now in dire straits. With the Marathas at his back and the Mughal emperor turned hostile, he had little choice. In an unexpected move, he requested the aid of the Marathas on the assurance that their demands for collecting taxes over the entire Deccan region would be granted. Here enters the story another prominent character who would come to play a key role during the upcoming tumultuous events. His name was Baji Rao, and he was the son and Peshwa of the Maratha king Shahu. Baji Rao assisted Nizam against the incursions of the Mughal emperor, thereby enabling Nizam to defeat Mubariz Khan at the Battle of Sakarkida in 1724.
Again, it sounds like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
After this defeat, the emperor was out of options, and he was forced to accept Nizam's dominance over the Deccan region. Nizam always nurtured ambition.
Nizam-ul-Mulk eventually created the semi-autonomous state of the Hyderabad. I hope I pronounced that right. Oh, I've done it again.
Of carving out an independent sphere of influence for himself in the Deccan, having correctly anticipated the coming decline of the Mughal Empire. And after this victory, these ambitions seemed to materialize. As soon as he got rid of the Mughal menace, he began his effort to free himself from the shackles of Maratha demands, since he no longer had any interest in following through with his obligations to Shahu. Nizam was, however, confident that he could utilize the internal divisions among the Marathas and bring them under control. He insisted that he couldn't decide whether to send the revenue to Shahu at Satara or Sambhaji at Kolhapur, who was the leader of the rival faction that was defeated by Shahu in 1708. He then proposed to act as the mediator between the two, a position which would, in effect, make him the kingmaker and the supreme power in the Deccan. This was not at all acceptable to Baji Rao, and the subsequent negotiations gradually broke down. Nizam then halted the existing payment of taxes in the neighboring regions, and openly gave his support for Sambhaji, who joined him with his forces. Shahu's court was divided into two parties. The conservative faction wanted to consolidate their hold on the Deccan and rebuild the Maratha country. The more aggressive faction led by Baji Rao saw the Mughals as rich, decadent, and weak, and the time was ripe for the expansion of Maratha power.
Sort of similar way how the Mongols saw the Chinese when they went to China. But again, if I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments.
Into northern India. In a heated court debate, Baji Rao sealed the argument with a vigorous speech that won Shahu over. "Let us transcend the barren Deccan and conquer central India. The Mughals have become weak, indolent womanizers and opium addicts. Strike, strike at the trunk, and the branches will fall off themselves. Listen but to my counsel, and I shall plant the saffron flag on the walls of Attock." The stage was set for the campaign that would lead to Palkhed. The initial moves began when one of Nizam's generals attempted to invade the northern parts of Maratha territories. He was eventually repulsed by the fast-moving and almost exclusively mounted Maratha army, and was forced to return back to his base at Aurangabad, while fighting many skirmishes during his retreat. Meanwhile, Baji Rao was hurrying from the south, with many Maratha contingents joining him along the way. In mid-October 1727, he moved as if to threaten Ahmadnagar, but actually bypassed it to the west and crossed the Godavari. This placed him within the heartland of Nizam's territories. Then he turned east towards the city of Jalna. Nizam tried to keep up with this disorienting and rapid pace, but by the time he had reached Jalna, Baji Rao's cavalry had already sacked the place, and moved east into his most prosperous districts. While Nizam was trying to match his pace, Baji Rao sacked city after city in front of him, taking advantage of his significantly superior mobility. Having laid waste to many rich areas, Baji Rao suddenly turned west towards Burhanpur, which was one of the most prosperous trading centers in the Deccan. Nizam detected this move and tried to check his advance, intending to fight a pitched battle. However, Baji Rao's move toward Burhanpur was a diversion. His army moved past and ravaged through Khandesh towards Bharuch, and eventually reached Gujarat. His intention seemed to be threefold: fight the war on enemy territory, exhaust the enemy army with superior mobility and scorched earth tactics, and lure Nizam into a place where he could be separated from his heavy guns, which were the trump card of his army. A river crossing seemed to be the ideal place to achieve this, and thus Baji Rao crossed many rivers, hoping to draw Nizam into an ideal location. Nizam initially followed, but his slow-moving army with its heavy guns was unable to keep up, being steadily exhausted by the constant chasing of the Marathas over devastated territories, already stripped bare of supplies. Seeing that he was incapable of dealing with this lighting warfare, Nizam changed his strategy. Instead of following Baji Rao's movements, he made a U-turn and marched on the Maratha heartland. On his way south, Nizam was able to capture numerous cities, but Shahu and the Maratha treasury was safe behind the walls of the Puranda fort. Nizam made no effort to besiege Maratha forts. Instead, he crowned Sambhaji as the Maratha king, and then started pillaging the areas in the immediate vicinity, intending to lure Baji Rao into a pitched battle where he could put to good use his devastating heavy artillery. Baji Rao didn't take the bait. Instead of heading towards Nizam's location, he headed towards Aurangabad, which was the greatest city of the Mughal Deccan, thus turning the tables and using Nizam's own strategy against him. The Mughal general now had to force march his army northwards in order to save Aurangabad from imminent destruction, leaving many of his heaviest guns behind in his haste to reach his objective. But in order to do this, he would have to cross the Godavari River at a specific point near the town of Palkhed. This was the opportunity Baji Rao was waiting for. Nizam's army began to cross the river Godavari, but due to the limitations of contemporary engineering and an extensive baggage train, this process was a long, drawn affair that took multiple days. An advance force was sent forward to scout the area and select a campsite. The nearby town of Palkhed was ideal because the army could be supplied easily. Slowly but steadily, the main body of the Mughal army began crossing the river, while the heavy guns were at the rear guard. Nizam's vanguard moved in order to set up a camp around Palkhed, unaware that Baji Rao's forces were already positioned nearby. In fact, Baji Rao's fast-moving army was already positioned around the area of Palkhed, correctly anticipating that Nizam would cross with his army there. Thus, the entire Maratha army had surrounded the city in a horseshoe formation, while the Mughals, oblivious to the perilous situation that they were putting themselves in, continued to cross the river. Suddenly, Maratha skirmishers advanced and began harassing Nizam's vanguard. The Mughals attempted to counterattack, but after a brief engagement, the skirmishers broke off and retreated back to their main formation. This was the wake-up call that Nizam needed. He realized that he had marched his army straight into a Maratha trap. What's more, his heavy guns, which were the most cumbersome and difficult part of his army to bring across the river, still stood on the opposite bank, together with the rear guard. Once again, Nizam's vanguard charged against the light Maratha cavalry in a desperate attempt to secure a nearby stream that was the only source of drinking water in their immediate area. But this move towards the open plain rendered the heavy and slow-moving Mughals vulnerable to attacks from all sides by the swift Maratha cavalry. After another
sort of strategy Muhammad of Ghor used against what was the name called? Prithviraj of one of the Rajputs in the north centuries ago. This time it's the Marathas who have the cavalry and not the Mughals. Or in this case, because for a while it'd been the Muslim sultanates who had all the light horses, but now it's the Marathas.
A brief skirmish, the vanguard was forced to retreat back to the main body of the army. At that point of the engagement, while Nizam's army was still getting to grips with their dire situation, a strong contingent of Marathas moved and completely cut off Nizam's main army from his rear guard and heavy guns. With a simple maneuver, Baji Rao had successfully separated Nizam from his greatest battlefield asset and trapped him in a place with rapidly dwindling supplies and drinking water. Surrounded on all sides and without any chance of escaping, Nizam recognized the futility of his position and was forced to open negotiations with the Maratha commander. Losses for both sides were few, but in a masterpiece of strategic mobility, Baji Rao was able to nullify the army of the most powerful Mughal warlord of the Deccan, while avoiding massive casualties. In the aftermath of the Battle of Palkhed, Nizam-ul-Mulk was forced to agree to every single term set by the Marathas. He had to abandon the cause of Sambhaji and, above all, accept the Maratha right to collect taxes in all of his territories in the Deccan region. Even though Nizam tried again to subdue the unruly Marathas, he again failed miserably at the Battle of Bhopal in 1737, where Baji Rao once again defeated Nizam in pretty much the same way. The victory at
Well, it's a good strategy. If you got more mobility, you exhaust your enemy. As long as your enemy doesn't have the same mobility.
Palkhed not only demonstrated Baji Rao's strategic genius, but also ensured the role of the Marathas as a prominent power within the Indian subcontinent in the decades that followed, demarcating the irreversible decline of the Mughal Empire. Special thanks to our friend Hoc S. Bellum for collaborating with us on this video. He also makes animated battles, so make sure to check out his channel. Credit goes to our awesome patrons who make videos like this one possible. Consider joining them to support our work. You can also support us by subscribing to our channel and clicking the bell button to get notified when our new videos are released. And as always, thank you for watching.
And that'll do it. This has been an interesting video by History March, and not much more I can add to that, apart from Baji Rao's military genius in this video. So I might look at some of the other major history channels I watch, and I might along the line react to more Indian history, like, you know, earlier Indian history, but I'm not sure yet. So if you like this reaction, please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.